Hello everyone, I am Srishti Damla and I welcome you all to the webinar on Global Perspective on India's Biotechnology Potential, Manufacturing Hub and Foreign Investment, organized by Bridge Policy Think Tank and Bangalore Bioinnovation Center. India is the third largest biotech destination in the Asia-Pacific region. In light of the COVID pandemic, the baton of finding an end to the crisis has been handed over to the biotechnology sector. This has exposed the industry to the realms of innovations and increased attention from private and public players. This webinar aims to discuss the road ahead for the industry in India in the new normal and its facets which require attention to ensure its prosperity. As we are all aware, Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO, Niti Aayog, is our chief guest for this webinar. However, due to a very urgent meeting, Mr. Amitabh Kant is unable to be present here live with us. He has been very kind and generous to share his video for this webinar's opening address. We will be playing the video of Mr. Amitabh Kant, but right before that, I would like to take a minute to introduce our esteemed and distinguished panelists. This panel is moderated by Mr. Tarun Nangia, Associate Editor, Special Projects, NewsX. He'll be here with us in a while. We have with us on the panel, Mr. Jitendra Kumar, Director, Bangalore Bioinnovation Center, Dr. Rudra Dubey, President, Ontogene Life Science Consultancy, Mrs. Kritika Krishnamurthy, Director, Bridge Policy Think Tank, Dr. Krishnan Srinivasan, Vice President ABLE, Dr. PM Murali, Ex-President ABLE and Chairman Janonam Group of Companies, and Dr. Manisha Acharya, CEO, Indigram Labs Foundation. I will now play the video of Mr. Amitabh Kant's opening address for this webinar.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for inviting me as the chief guest for the webinar themed on India's biotech potential, the global perspective on India being the manufacturing hub, and the scope for foreign investments in India. A quick overview of the market size shows that there is demand capacity and the scope for the market to immensely grow in India. The global market evaluation of biotech industry stands at approximately $400 billion, with Indian biotech industry valued at $551 billion, as against $44.47 billion in 2017. So this is an industry which is growing and expanding in India. An industry that was $1 billion in 2005 and was expected to reach $11 billion in 2018 is currently valued at $51 billion. This steep growth in biotechnology sector makes it evident that biotech is the next wave of technological change that can be more pervasive than the IT sector in India. There are more than 2,500 biotech companies in India with approximately 1 million biotech workforce in the market. Additionally, 15,500 biotech graduates join the biotech market every year. India has many assets in its strong pool of scientists and engineers, vast institutional network, and cost-effective manufacturing, and aims to create 10 million jobs by 2024, adding to the bioeconomy. Ladies and gentlemen, India's bioeconomy registered an approximately 15% growth in 2018 as compared to just 6.8% in 2017, and currently is growing and expanding rapidly. India's biopharma sector has emerged as a key global player, offering numerous advantages in terms of faster market entry and skilled manpower. There's a large market for biopharma valued at $19 billion. There are a huge number of diagnostic, medical devices, vaccines, biofuels, biologics, therapeutics. All these add hugely to India's bioeconomy. If you look at biosimilars, there's been innovation in biomanufacturing technologies that are critical for the success of the Indian biotech industry. In the last decade, India has seen the largest number of approved biosimilars which are serving the needs of patients globally. The Department of Biotechnology, along with the Ministry of Health, has built a very vibrant and dynamic foundation that assures safe and efficacious and the most affordable biosimilars in the world. Our policies are geared towards creating a level playing field for both domestic and international industry in India and positioning India as a global hub for end-to-end manufacturing. India has always been open for foreign manufacturers. We have Philips, Thermo, GE, Siemens among the top exporters in India. While we also have our domestic players such as Biocon, TransAsia, Merrill, Vanguard that have become extremely trustworthy brands. There are several current initiatives. We are already working to boost the biotech sector under the flagship programs Make in India and Startup India. An increase in biotech incubators can boost research and promote growth of startups. India already recognizes the necessity for entrepreneurship development among the youth in the country. BIRAC, an industry government interface arm of Department of Biotechnology, has been a huge success and is involved in biotech, startup policy and startups exposure for international and national outreach. India has already established biotechnology parks and incubators across the country to facilitate scientists and MSMEs with technology demonstration and pilot studies for accelerated commercial development. The National Biopharma Mission, launched in 2017, has its aims to make India a hub for design and development of novel, affordable and effective biopharmaceutical products for combating public health concerns. India is globally aligned with its public health initiatives. In accordance with WHO's blueprint for R&D to address public health issues, IND-CEPI is a mission to strengthen development of vaccines for the diseases of epidemic potential in India and build public health preparedness system for emerging infectious diseases. India is the vaccine capital of the world, and almost 65 to 70% of the world vaccines are manufactured in India. India is committed to taking the India biotechnology industry to global excellence. It is a collective vision for India to be an export hub. India has already sold medical supplies to more than 150 countries during COVID and is embarked on its journey in becoming a global hub for manufacturing, gaining the trust of the world. To stimulate the sector, there needs to be an increased investment in R&D. Commercialization of R&D and in technology has to be encouraged, with quality research being carried out in public institutes and adopted by the private sector. India is focusing on investing more in its R&D and with substantial investment from government funding. Gene editing related research, gene therapies can ensure low-cost, high-value treatments, increasing the scope of medical tourism for India, which makes it critical to focus on R&D. This can greatly help and assist in developing affordable treatments for rare diseases. We need to focus on whole genome sequencing of representative population across India to build a catalogue of genetic variations in Indian population. Genome India is an initiative in this direction. A catalogue of genetic variations will facilitate large-scale genetic studies in a cost-effective manner. With full genome sequencing and large amount of genetic data available, integration of databases will require sophisticated bioinformatics tools. Organizing this data into suitable databases and developing appropriate software tools for analyzing the same will be an immense challenge. But this is also an opportunity to focus on by biotech IT specialists through collaborations. India's bioeconomy can head towards $100 billion in 2025 with all the right policies and given the huge interest and enthusiasm of the Indian industry. With this, I would like to thank the Bridge Policy Think Tank for holding this webinar and initiating discussion around enhancing India's biotech potential, which is truly huge and enormous. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
That was a very insightful message, and definitely biotechnology is the future for all of us. I would now take a leave and hand it over to Mr. Tarun Nangia. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yep. So, first of all, I would like to welcome my panelists for today. It is indeed a very exciting topic at a very relevant time, which is global perspective on India's biotech potential. India has been talked about as a destination for this sector for long enough years, but our day in the sun has not come as yet, but that day is not far. And I would like to first welcome all my panelists for this discussion today. I would like to welcome Dr. Jitendra Kumar for taking out time for this important issue. Dr. Rudra Dubey has also joined us today. Thank you so much for taking out time. Dr. Manish Acharya is with us today. Dr. P.M. Murali is with us today. Kritika Krishnamurthy, who has helped in setting and organizing this important issue and got all of us to talk on this issue. She is joining us today. Dr. Krishnan Srinivasan is with us today. I wish that the deliberations that happened today, if minutes of this deliberation can come through and that can be presented to relevant authorities after the discussion today. I would first like to start with Dr. Jitendra Kumar. Before I ask you the first question, I would want to request an opening comment from you to set the stage for this issue as to how you look at it, because you have that eagle-eyed vision from where you can observe the whole sector and India's place in the sun. May I request you to first please say a few words on this issue?
Thank you, Tarun, for inviting me on this platform and requesting me to give an opening remark. But I would like to say that there are very senior people here, Dr. Murali, Dr. J.S. Krishnan, who are industry leaders, and definitely they can tell more insights. They can give more insights into the in the sector. But my expertise lies in the startup ecosystem, and I would like to start from there. See, there are, as Mr. Amitabh Khan said, there are 2,500 or more startups in the country. And this number has to increase because we need to increase the pipeline of biotech entrepreneurs for various reasons. The innovation has to increase in its quantity as well as quality. Therefore, number of startups have to increase, and the number of incubators have to be increased, as well as the capabilities of incubator. For example, if a startup is undertaking a biomanufacturing, or he or she is in the sector of manufacturing or biomanufacturing or biotechnology to say, they have to cross through different stages of technology readiness level as well as business aspects. Say, for example, proof of concept they do in the Bio-Incubation Center. Then we don't have capacity, at least in current bioincubators, to even do a pilot scale scale-up manufacturing. So unless they do that, there is not going to be an investment coming. So these all are interlinked. Unless they show the proof of concept at the pilot scale, whether it is a biopharmaceutical or a pharmaceutical or a medical device or a diagnostics, we need clean rooms. We need biomanufacturing pilot scale plants. We don't have that in the bioincubators. So they have to basically go for outside. They have to look for outside, and definitely these are costly affairs. The fundings are not commensurate with what they need at that stage. So the scaling up is a problem for the new innovative solutions to emerge from this country. Of course, contract research and manufacturing sector, it's a very good, we have capability there, but I was talking from the innovation aspect. I think we are growing at a very fast pace. The optimism is very good for the startup numbers as well as the incubators, etc. What we need to strengthen now also is the public R&D, quality of research, so that they can do more industrial relevant R&D, which is not happening currently, so that new products and technologies come to the emerging markets. So I think with this opening remark, I would pass on to other speakers and pass on to you.
So I will now go to Krishnan. Thank you so much for your round of opening comment. I'll go to Krishnan Srinivasan, Dr. Krishnan Srinivasan, for his opening comment, and also request him to add about what Dr. Jitendra Kumar made a very interesting point, industry relevant product. Could you please elaborate on that too after your introduction?
Okay. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I think this is one of the very critical sort of situation in the country where we should not look at more as a challenge today. We should look at it more as an opportunity. That's one of the important aspects today, and biotechnology is going to definitely play a very, very critical role. I would like to specifically touch upon the industrial biotech segment and the bioagriculture, because the biotech segment is vast, and pharma biotech, we have other stalwarts like Dr. Murli probably can tell more on that. Coming to the point of Dr. Jitendra's mentioning about the startup ecosystem and the challenges, I think today's situation is everybody would like to have a startup, but then I think what is critically important today is what is the need of the hour, what is that biotechnology. And again, as Dr. Jitendra mentioned, I think establishing the proof of concept, collaborating together with other industry leaders, getting mentoring, getting the right support from industry leaders is what is critically important if they have to succeed. Of course, from a government perspective, there has been a lot of encouragement from the government, from the initial funding and support. However, what we have seen is, while there is a lot of encouragement from the government, there is also a slow process which is going on in this particular segment. Everybody is aware the time it takes from a discovery to the level of commercialization is quite long. And this is where one should not get discouraged during this process. There will be challenges from a regulatory perspective, from a biodiversity perspective and all that, which one needs to address. And I would say that this particular startup ecosystem needs more support from experienced sort of industry people and also stalwarts to mentor them to make sure that India sees more successful startups.
Okay. Thank you for your opening comment. I'll go across to Dr. PM Murali for his round of opening comment.
Thank you, Tarun, and thank you, Bridge and Dr. Jitendra, for asking me to be on this panel. It's a pleasure. So just for the records, it was nice to listen to Mr. Amitabh Kant, who quoted the $100 billion figure. So for some of you, I think Jitendra knows, and for some of you, I've been one of the architects for that number to be put out into the Indian arena. So it had a lot of number crunching before that number came out, actually. And also the biopharma policy happened when I was the president of the association, and it was during that time that we released this much ahead of the US in the United States. So I made it a point to see that the senators were there when the biopharma policy was actually released in the United States on the sidelines of bio. So it gives me great pleasure to be associated with all those nice things that was mentioned about biotech. Since you are mentioning that we need to sort of have a small white paper of some sorts that will go in after this meeting is done, I think the key to this entire discussion should be on how can we actually use this adversity that is currently going on in favor of how we can fast track, cut through several hoops and loops that are being put in place that has really caused this industry not to grow very fast. So how can we go through that? So that would be the aim at which we should be deliberating. I don't want to have that on my opening comment, but I would like to clearly say this is the direction in which I will be communicating in terms of how do we move from here to the next stage. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go across to Kritika Krishnamurthy. You came up with this idea and discussion with our eminent panelists of having a webinar on this topic as a think tank which takes up such issues, also helps them reach to a certain conclusion in the policy space. Why did you come up with such an idea, and how do you think is relevant in the current times?
Tarun, as our eminent panelists have already pointed out, much needs to be done in this sector, and I have had the opportunity of working in the pharma sector and the biotech sector and allied sectors. We've worked on so many different areas. We've worked on funding. We've worked on, my saddest worry was that the most work that happens in India is really job work related when it comes to these kind of things. And since many, many years, we've always known that the Indian policy in biotech needs an overhaul. It needs to create an entire backbone of a support system for our Indian industries to actually take it over. And when the generic manufacturing drug industry in India is now doing a tremendous job in the COVID crisis. And that is when our policy think tank again started promoting biotech policy and saying that, look, generic companies, for example, have a very tough time getting funding because they say that you don't have patents, so how do we value you? And, so many things opened up policy-wise. And now this crisis and the wonderful way in which the biotech industry has come forward and performed has given us an opportunity in bringing forward all the policy issues that were always there, but we're not getting the right kind of limelight. So now we have the right platform and the right support and the right narrative from the industry itself to say that, look, these guys are doing incredible work and they need policy changes to support them. So this is the idea that, along with Bangalore Bioinnovation and the other panelists, we came up with this webinar.
Okay, interesting to know that. I'll go across to Dr. Rudra Dubey for his opening comment.
Thank you, Ubraj, for giving me this opportunity, and great to see everybody back there. Good evening. I'm calling in from US, so my time zone is different. So I am in consultancy space, and I provide consultancy to life sciences, and I would try to do the similar thing. I communicate with Jitendra quite often, and we share our views, and I try to provide insights. So I'm doing the similar thing here, and we do the situation analysis, and then we come up with what are the key challenges we have and how to overcome, so that we have recommendation and we implement those recommendations so that we could achieve what we want to. And I would be playing a little bit different role here in the webinar. And sometime you might find I might sound very critic, but this is essential to set the gel in the right shape. So I would try to give a very quick overview what's happening in the world. 2 days before, we had a big seminar done by USBIC, and the Prime Minister spoke, and here Secretary Pompeo spoke, and the Ambassador of India in US, he spoke, and several senators there spoke. And they were one resounding voice that there should be a big tie. And one of the areas that emerged, other than many, was healthcare. And of course, in healthcare, that's where the biotech and pharma industry sets in. And that's why it's getting very relevant to refocus on biopharma to support this big initiative at the country level, India and US. It's an unprecedented situation where India has to leverage its strength and value offering so that it can deliver something which US needs, so that the partnership could be built. And I see lots of potential. And since my background is biotechnology, I had my MS and PhD back from India, so I'm aware of what potential India has in this industry, and how we can leverage in order to meet the global market. And if we try to build this up for US, we are ready to build this up for rest part of the world. And I would be focusing on a few things which have recently emerged in healthcare, and how it dictates how your strategy and policy should be shaping in order to tap those opportunities. And it's coming into the area where India has a strength. So combining IT and digitalization into biopharma is the recent thing. And that's where we have to also focus on, while we are focusing on the ecosystem. And it's nicely illustrated by Mr. Amitabh Khan and Dr. Jitendra, that we have to build our ecosystem back there. And ecosystem, when you're building, you have to know what's recent, and you should shape your ecosystem based on that. So we have to go beyond our manufacturing capability, innovation capability, and build, while we are building the gaps to achieve our goal, we should keep in mind where the market is, where the needs are, and where the big seven, US and other European countries and Japan are, and we should align our strategy based on that. And thanks again, Brij, and I would be happy to participate again.
Thank you, Dr. Dubey. I'll go across to Dr. Manisha Acharya for her opening comment.
Thank you so much, Tarun. As already Dr. Jitendra Kumar and Dr. PM Murli, Dr. Krishnan Kumar already told what exactly we need for the startups and the development of the startups and other bio-incubators and other incubation centers. There is already lots of development, lots of incubation center presently in India. It is supported by Department of Biotechnology, supported by Department of Science and Technology, even Atal Innovation Mission. But here, as I am into this incubation since 2011, here I would like to mention that there are several incubation centers, particularly what the biotech startups, what problem they are facing. They are very good into their technology side. They can develop their prototype very well, but after that actual problems arise. They how to scale up, how to do their marketing, they have no idea. So we as an incubator, we as a facilitator, we need to more focus on that, because as an innovator, they know how to do their innovation, they know everything, how to things, but they don't have any idea how to market that product. And this particular problems, lots of biotech startups are facing. So we need to take care of that, and that's it. In our initial comment, I just would like to mention this thing.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'll go across to Dr. Jitendra Kumar. A very pertinent point to note is that 4 out of top 5 applicants who were granted patents in science and technology and development (R&D), which is in 2017, were government entities. Now, in your opinion, why is the funding for private entrepreneurs in biotech-related R&D difficult to access? Does India have some peculiar problems which need to be addressed urgently for the floodgates of finance to open for our entrepreneurs? I mean, where are we at fault?
So, public research labs in India, definitely most of the funding goes to public research lab, you're right. And therefore, the number of publications, the R&D would happen there, obviously, because these are meant for that. However, I think universities have not excelled in India, to be honest. University system has not excelled. It is the public research labs in another category, which are like islands of excellence, maybe some CSIR labs, some DBT labs, you can count on fingers actually. In this country, which is vast in its aspects and horizon, the number of excellent public research labs are limited. Although the patents may be filed, but the number of patents definitely is very, very comparatively less compared to, say, US, European countries, China, etc. So we are not in the top nations to file the patents, and that is one aspect. The second aspect is, even if some R&D is happening at public research labs, how many of them are translated is another question. Very less, minuscule amount. Now, there has been a huge, discussions on how to increase the private funding on R&D, how to increase the funding for the startups so that they can reach to that level, so support system. In recent times, we have seen that after the setting up of DBT and BIRAC, and especially the BIRAC, we have started, BIRAC has started so many programs which actually gives direct funding to even the individuals also. Let us not even start the, talk about the private entities or companies, to the individuals also, Biotech Ignition Grant. Then there is a SIBRI, BIPP, contract research. So there's whole chain of grants available for the startup or individual innovator to reach a level of proof of concept. So definitely, since independence, the quantity of funding that has happened to public research labs, we cannot match so far, because this startup or public or private funding from the government to the private entity has started in recent times. But I think this is going to grow, because as Dr. Krishnan in his opening remarks said, that it is time for these smaller entities, the startups, to collaborate with the bigger companies. And that's when I think if the bigger companies in India see the potential, then I think there could be a funding from that side. So that will increase the floodgates of funding. Then, of course, biotechnology is FDI, 100% FDI. So definitely the startups who reach at a certain level, they should be exposed to the foreign capital. Because early stage venture funding is limited in India. We have to increase the early stage funding. I'm talking about the venture funding. I'm not talking about the government grants right now. Government grants I just covered. So therefore, I think these steps where we expose these startup companies to the international market, we expose our startup companies to the established companies. For example, if bio-incubators, we can have regular meetings with the bigger companies and make them cross talk to each other. I think the floodgates of capital access, apart from the government funding, because government cannot fund the commercialization activity, it can only fund to the proof of concept at certain level. But after that, the scale up and all has to, market capital has to be there, or access to capital has to be there. So I think these are the things that has to happen in India.
Very, very relevant points made by Dr. Jitendra Kumar in today's context. And he made a very important point about the world-class university system and the lack of which is preventing, in a sense, money for R&D. I remember having interviewed Nitin Nohoria, who was the Dean of Harvard Business School. And he had told me then that Harvard has an endowment fund of something like $48 billion. That is a lot of money to, part of that could have been used to fund projects. So that happens in America. But I want to get Dr. Rudra Dubey in to understand, is that a very important problem that India should tackle first, having a world-class university system? We can't be dependent on government grants for everything.
Yes, certainly. So thank you. I would just add a few things what Jitendra said to give perspective where his questions are. The ecosystem, and in ecosystem for biotech, you have three major components. One is academia, other one is a startup, and then third one, which is he mentioned, that combination of the funding system and big pharma. So the academia, they provide innovation, and a startup, they seed the entrepreneurship, and they get grant and some friends and family funding or angel level funding at the most. And with that, they can pass trenches of Death of Valley. But the Death of Valley is so deep and big for biotech pharma, because you need to go up until like 10 to 12 years before your product would be in the market and serving the patients. So this is a long time horizon, and deep pocket investments are needed. And that's where the venture capitalists and also the big pharma playing role. So these are the three components of the ecosystem, and they need to be built up. Of course, it is initiated at university level, and we touched on that we need to have an excellent university system that should give best quality innovation with the patents. And we should have a great startup setup where we should be supporting those startups entrepreneurship. And that's where actual thing that starts, which is called risk taking, because you are investing money and there's a high risk. And that risk should keep reducing at your investment, and confidence that the output would be hitting the market or serving the patient should be there. And that risk needed to be reduced by working towards it. And the startup they do play a big role. They eliminate risk as much as possible and hand it over to big pharma, where they have a deep pocket to finish the product and produce that thing to the market, and the patients or any other elements are taking advantage of. So these are the key elements. And in later part of my discussion, I would touch on these areas more specifically, giving a few examples from like Cambridge, Boston area. And Tarun, you touched on Harvard. My workplace is in Cambridge, and I am just a stone throw away distance from MIT. And the place where majority of innovation happens is the place that I am in. And I see how air is thick with innovation and startups. And it will be a pleasure discussing more, but I will hand over to you so that we can hear other panelists.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dubey. I'll go across to Manisha Acharya. Dr. Manisha Acharya, I would want to ask you that in your article about incubation trends in year 2020 for the startups, you discuss the use of artificial intelligence-based technology skills and for innovation-driven startups. How important is the role of AI that can help the biotech industry? How do you see this AI helping the biotech sector, or is that term exaggerated?
We all know that artificial intelligence in various sectors, like it is huge use, be it in chatbots, e-commerce, supply chain, cybersecurity, healthcare, agri, food, everywhere we are using the AI. It has the transformative impact on biotechnology. There are many ways in which biotech companies can leverage AI and enrich their work. It has a huge impact in medical biotech, agri-biotech, including animal and food biotech, industrial biotechnology, and bioinformatics. Biotechnology firms are now realizing the value that artificial intelligence can bring their entire business in the form of crucial prediction, expanding accessibility, effective and efficient decision making, and cost effectiveness. Maybe it may sound that artificial intelligence is futuristic, but it's already exists in many everyday technologies. For example, it gives our handheld device voice and facial recognition capabilities. AI also making its presence felt in biotechnology, where it has become integral to many aspects of drug discovery and development. AI application in biotech include drug target identification, drug screening, image screening, and predictive modeling. AI is also being used to manage the clinical trial data. AI also definitely revolutionized the customized medicine preparation, that clinical diagnosis, epidemic modeling, which is hugely used this current pandemic situation, cancer modeling, gene editing, and modification, medication management, etc. By leveraging machine learning and AI, can manage disparate clinical trial database, enhance the virtual screening, and analyze a vast amount of that data. Thus, by scientists and innovators, they must keep looking for new combination to unlock the power of AI ML for predictive modeling. AI is also, besides this healthcare, here I would like to mention, because I am heading a technology business incubator, which is the agriculture and food tech. So where I saw lots of startups into the agri and food who are using AI. So AI has a very good impact, not only in not only in healthcare biotech, but also in agri and food biotech sector, like the prediction of disease, commodity testing, monitoring crop and soil health. Machine learning algorithm help tracking the prediction and various environmental challenges that, like the weather change that impact the crop yield. We all know this pandemic situation, AI is helping proper screening, tracking and predicting the current future patients. Preliminarily, AI can utilize for early detection and diagnosis. AI is also used for the drug and vaccine development and for the reduction of workload of healthcare workers. So I think definitely AI has a lots of things in biotech sector. Definitely it has a huge impact for the, and many startups are coming out in all sectors of biotech. Maybe it is in healthcare, maybe it is in medical, maybe it is in agri, food, or industrial biotechnology. Everywhere that artificial intelligence has a good impact, and lots of startups and innovators are coming in this line.
Very interesting points made by Dr. Manisha Acharya. I will now move on to Dr. Krishnan G. Srinivasan. And I want to ask him that India has the second highest number of approved US Food and Drug Administration manufacturing plants. Of course, there is news on and off about some quality issues, and there's a diplomatic row that happens. Some cases have become very famous internationally also. All that is said and done, but India as a whole has the largest number of USFDA approved plants, and we have been doing well. Also on the quality front, because we export a lot to the US. Now I want to ask you that even though we are that, to open the frontiers and take the growth to the next level, what can the government do in your view?
Thank you. Yeah, just a second. Yeah. First and foremost, as I already mentioned in my initial remark, that I will be concentrating more on the industrial biotech and bioagriculture. It is critically important to understand the biotech segment by itself has been growing leaps and bounds. The industrial biotech segment has been growing double-digit for the past 3 decades. And specifically during this time, if I have to look at only specific areas of industrial biotech, specifically the food, the detergent, what we call the hygiene segment, and the bioenergy.
Doctor, sorry to interrupt you, we are not able to see you. If may I request you to please put on your camera?
The reason, okay, I will do that. The problem, I have a bandwidth issue, and then I didn't want it to get disconnected.
Then you may continue. Then you may continue as it is.
That's the reason I initially told that we are not able to, because I have been having various calls and it gets disconnected. That's why. I can show you my face now and go. Yeah. Yeah. So specifically, if you look at the food segment today, there is a demand for quality food. There is a demand for nutrition, and people are more health conscious. This is where biotechnology has a very, very important role to play. And then again, going back to the detergent, overall with the current pandemic, cleanliness and hygiene are very, very critical. And biotechnology and its role again here in this segment is definitely, it has gained a very big momentum today. However, there is more opportunities in this segment. And then the bioenergy segment, of course, today, if you look at our dependence on the imported crude, how can we reduce that? And there is already a big measure to look at what they call the second generation ethanol. This is basically ethanol from agricultural residues. And here again, biotechnology and enzymes play a very, very critical role, and we are in the forefront. These are some of the examples today where these are segments which will grow further. Just to give you a few examples, there are various other segments in the industrial biotech segments. Going to the bioagriculture, I think we are all aware, the only segment which has been seen lesser impact of COVID, and it's steadily growing, is the bioagriculture. Sorry, the agriculture segment. This is one area, again, if you look at it, to support the farmers to double their income and look at supporting them to adopt to technologies which are gaining momentum, like plant protection, yield enhancements, and biostimulants to support them. These are areas which one needs to look at it as an opportunity. And the government's point of view, it is critical, and I will continue to use the word innovation in biotechnology. It's always my belief, and most of others' belief also. It is innovation, continuous innovation, which is going to grow the segment. And if you also look at it, there are some innovations globally which sometimes may not suit the Indian conditions, which means that there is a need for local innovation. There is a need for collaboration between the industry and academia. The government needs to identify the leaders in this segment. And of course, last but not the least, if, for example, if I can take the country name China now, if they have grown leaps and bounds in this segment, it is because of regulatory enforcement. Today, we don't have, while we have regulation, we don't have an enforcement. If we are wanting to protect the environment, look at the industries which are polluting. How can biotechnology play a role? So I think it's for the government to look at it and go to the next level of saying, now we need to enforce. There are a lot of regulations, but it's not enforced. So I would conclude by saying the opportunities are very big in both bioagriculture and industrial biotech. And it is critically important for the government to understand the segments better, specifically look for collaboration between industry and academia, identify the leaders in the segment. It's not that every company would like to produce enzymes. Fermentation technology is a different ballgame altogether. And to set up a facility, one needs sufficient volume to even survive if you set up a facility. These are something which biotechnology by itself is something which everybody needs to understand. It is innovation, it is bigger investment, the gestation period is longer. So one needs to identify and understand the challenges of the segment and focus in our efforts to make it more successful. And to go back to what you want, how can the government additionally grow the segment? There are plenty of opportunities.
Thank you for these points, Dr. Srinivasan. They were indeed enlightening. I will go across to Dr. P.M. Murali. I remember reading a book read by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, where he said that a man is known by the size of his library, not the size of his car. And I'm mighty impressed seeing Dr. P.M. Murali's library in the background. But to bring back to the point, I want to ask a question. You're an active observer of the Indian market and actually working in the US biotech field. What are the key factors that had made the United States of America key to go to market for intellectual property and patents? What can the Indian policymakers learn from America and replicate it in this country? Can you give us an overview?
Arun, that's a good question. So I think I'll have to take you back a little bit on history, and it'll be a nice journey. Don't worry, I won't make it very boring. Okay. So a lot of the biotech activity started somewhere in the 80s. So some of us were among the earliest genetic engineers of this country. We did not know anything. We were all traditional molecular biology people. Then we moved to a different religion, which is genetic engineering. And some of us moved further down from the genetic engineering space into synthetic biology, which is new. So that's where I did a lot of my work doing between two countries, US and India. And I was also part of the defense preparedness in the US, worked on some of those intricate biological threat handling issues in the US. So now coming back here, I mean, the US had a very, very big head start. Okay, so let's not forget that they had a very big head start. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be catching up with them. We should ultimately. But what actually stops us from catching up is a number of points. In fact, a lot of this has been written. I myself have presented, I think, a number of fact documents to various governments and policymakers. I myself have interacted with Amitabh Kant many times, and I've informed them what should be done and what could be done. But the basic philosophy here is that there is a very unique case for the biotech industry, because it needs several cogs before the wheel is actually there. It's not like a machine tool industry, nor like a automobile industry, nor like a chip industry. This has got several components, starting from biodiversity to manpower to regulatory to manufacturing to pollution to samples that come in, cold storage. There's a huge number of things that need to be done. So that's where India is doing a lot of catch up now, because these are all things that have not been in place, and we started out only in the 80s. And our first attempts were to see that, all these universities and all these public sector undertakings were very quickly empowered to have equipment, infrastructure, hardware, etc., so that they can at least start doing some work. And then from the 90s, we decided it can't be just in Delhi, Bangalore, etc., because the other centers also wanted places. So we decided we will expand into other areas as well. So till about the mid-90s, India was more and more equipping on what it should be doing and how we can start research, etc. Now there is a very, very fundamental issue with us. On policy making, we have been doing a very, very big yo-yo on biotechnology. That's because a lot of us have had some fears about what it can do and what it cannot do. So we have been going on an absolute yo-yo, saying that, it's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. So you asked a question to Krishnan, which should have been directed to me. So we have the largest FDA approved setup. Yes, we must be very proud. Outside US, we are the best here. And remember, what happened was it was all on account of the chemistry that was which saw a very big uprise there. So the Indian pharma industry was more on the reverse engineering, and it was more on the chemistry dominated area. Biology was taking a very big backseat. Now, only this pandemic has woken up all the people to the fact that there is a sphere called biology, which is what is important for all this. Because everybody thought, okay, you pop a pill, you're going to be getting out of COVID. And then they realized, my God, it's not going to be that. It's going to be something else. And this is going to be in an area which is very different. Now starts the game. So what has happened is, we have understood that whatever regulatory mazes and hoops and all those roadblocks which were there, suddenly the same set of people, the same bureaucrats, the same governments, the same set of administrators are able to unlock it and are able to fast track it. And believe me, there is nothing unethical in the fast tracking at all, contrary to the fear that you may get a very substandard vaccine, people will die of something. All those things are not going to happen. Let me tell you, none of the companies are going to risk themselves. They have built it very, very carefully. They are not going to put out a vaccine where 100 people are going to die. So those things are never going to happen. So Tarun, you'll have to understand now what has happened is we have demonstrated to the world that all the policies that we as industry people went and gave it, which people read it and said, yeah, we will take action, and it was passed on to the principal secretary, to the secretary, to the undersecretary, to the oversecretary, to the site secretary, and so on and so forth. Finally, there was a methodology in this madness where everything started moving. All that we need to do is to simply copy what we have done now during the pandemic and have it as your regular way of doing things. So you're going to be catching up with the US very, very fast if you do that. Now, coming back to the most critical question you asked, in terms of IP, the most important part is, if you see on a scale, whichever scale you take, whoever has done the scale, US is topping the chart with #1, because there are several parameters to that. I mean, I hope all of you know that patents are just not the only thing about IP, right? You have copyrights, you have trademarks, you have treaties, you have agreements, you have several of those. So if everything put together, like what Bridge does on policies, there are people who have done these policies to say where we stand. So we are, I think, probably about 38 or 40 in the world today. And, US stands #1 with about 35 marks. And we are at about 7 or 6 or whatever it is. Now, what is the reason for that? It's very simple. They had a very integrated approach in terms of policing, which is what Krishnan was alluding to. If you are going to have an intellectual property enforcement that is going to happen, then the respect for the enforcement happens. It's like traffic signals, right? If you value life, you're not going to be driving on the wrong side. You're not going to be killing people. You're not going to be hitting. So if you're going to be having a policy where road sense is going to save lives, it's the same thing about intellectual property. You need to be sure that it is enforceable, it is policeable, it is going to take place. Imagine, Tarun, I'm going to sue a company for violating my patent. You know how long it will take for me to get redressal from the court? Even though I would say courts are now very good, they at least give you injunction in the middle to say, okay, let's stop here, you carry on, or something like that is resolved. But it takes a long time. And biotech is a very small, splintered institution. So you will not see copycats being big companies. You will see another small copycat, another small copycat, another small copycat. How many small copycats can you be hunting down? It's just not even possible. Some of them live in virtual addresses and do virtual synthetic biology on the internet, try to use third-party software. So to answer your question here, what is needed is the same approach that we have used in the pandemic to integrate all the various departments to ensure now you quickly have a centralized focus on how biotech can be done. And under the umbrella of that central focus, if you put all these components which are coming, be it university type of education systems that are missing, patents that are missing, regulatory affairs that are missing, infrastructure that are missing, what are the policies that are needed? All of them will come. So the key is we must use the pandemic as the way to demonstrate that we will hold on to this pandemic infrastructure. Let's call it the pandemic infrastructure that we have put in place where we can fast track any goddamn thing. And that's what we should be doing. I hope I have answered you, Tarun.
Yes, very well. There were some witty points too. And thank you. A lot of interesting points in your answer. I'll go across now to Dr. Rudra Dubey. Now, San Francisco and Boston in US are, in a sense, a hub or a magnet for biotech companies. US as a whole, has about 45% of the global market, of the global pharmaceutical market, if I may say. I want to know from you, what are the factors that has helped the evolution of the biotech sector in US, and how difficult is it then to replicate that, or India should have a completely different journey? The US is a very different market. The financing ecosystem is also very different. Is there any similarity between these two democracies, or we will have a very different trajectory in this sector?
First of all, a very positive thing, we have a similarity, and that is the brain that generates innovation. So we have in India, and those Indians who come here, they do the same here. So the basic we have, and Dr. Murali touched on, and Dr. Krishnan as well. We lack few things, and we are building on. That's the good news. And the policymakers are taking a lot of interest because of this COVID pandemic. And India got a boost when it provided hydroxychloroquine. And it's not simple, like a small thing when a president of United States, to whom the whole world here mentioned that India stood to the occasion and provided SCQ. So we have products as well who gave us success and glory. So what we lack is a few things that Jitendra touched upon and Dr. Murali touched on. We lack a few things at a policy level and few things at strategy level. And of course, implementation is a big area of concern, and we should have multiple of this kind of think tank to discuss these three layers. So coming to your question quickly, the San Francisco and Boston, Cambridge area are the biggest hub for biotechnology. And both of them have a unique capability. It's not the same. And both of them are very important. San Francisco has got like a world's top level of investment environment culture. and they take risk. They take any venture, and that's why the Silicon Valley is there, and biotech is riding on it. The Boston, Cambridge area has got another unique thing, and that's what India has a strength in. The institutions, they are the best in the world. Harvard and MIT are there, and apart from that, I would say the biggest, the government funding goes to Boston, MIT the area. The Massachusetts ecosystem is the strongest, and it generates 14,000 jobs in biotechnology. So it gives out to the society what is invested in it. And it gets like a $2.1 billion invested by government, and then $8.8 billion invested by the investors, private investors. And in turn, you have 14,000 plus jobs. And most importantly, this year, they put about 2,000 clinical trials. And what it spells, at this time, if you measure in terms of the output, so they are serving 430 million patients. So anything that came out of the biotechnology hub of Cambridge, Boston is serving that many patients. It's serving that many, the employment pool. So these are the big gains from the biotech hub that the Massachusetts cluster has. And that kind of cluster and hub we need to build. So what it takes to build those things. So my question is this, and I'm going to answer from your thought lines. So can we create a Pfizer in India? And we would say, yes, of course. And I'm with that. But the question is what it takes to create Pfizer and how many? And we can create many, trust me. It's what it takes. So the Pfizer can be created by 25 small companies. So can we create 25 small companies? And that's where the biotech is struggling with. Biotech, the startups, incubators, they are the one who can create 25 companies on which Pfizer-like companies can be built, and everything that we talked about since the morning, since this, the beginning of this think tank discussion, it will fall in place. And I'm going back to what Manisha talked about, and I'm going to paint a bigger picture for that the AI and other term is real world evidence that makes more sense for the healthcare and biotechnology. And that is shaping the whole industry. And we have to take a success story of India. India became most successful in the IT space. So it's because of two reasons. One is we have IT coding capability, and the second one is we could deliver. So these two success, and we could deliver faster. Biotech and healthcare is getting into the realm of IT-based, AI-based clinical trial and product development. And not only that, the feedback of the products, that how they are successful in terms of bringing the clinical benefit to the patients are most critical. So the doctors are under pressure to give pay for performance, that whatever script they wrote, that should work. It's not that you throw in paracetamol or acetaminophen and it will alleviate pain and you say, yes, it took care of the cancer. You have to show that your drug, you wrote a prescription, that drug worked. Same way the insurance company in US, we have the payers, they take care of the main money that goes in transaction of healthcare. So they need to have evidence to support any drug. So any drug that the pharma company or biotech company are bringing in, they have to show evidence. And that evidence goes back to not only limited to the clinical trial evidences. You have to generate evidences from real world that it's performing in the world. And that's where big data analytics and AI and the capability that India has in terms of IT, that kind of success is there. So not only building the biotechnology innovation per se, it's just a limited domain, but we have to look at how the healthcare industry of which the biotech is a component and part of, you got to fit in and where it's heading to. And it's heading to an arena. And if you heard Prime Minister speaking about in India, the healthcare is growing with 22% growth rate. It's unheard of. Can you imagine 22% growth, and biotech fits into it? And what is missing is data analytics, AI, and producing the real world evidences. And if your product is aligned to this, it's going to be successful. So there are low hanging fruits, but there are a big horizon and long-term goals. So the long-term goals should be now reset for the biotechnology. It's not just the, okay, you have a target, you have the product that would be hitting the target, and it would be doing the all endpoints, and clinical trial, it will give us out beautiful data, and that would be good enough to satisfy the regulatory agencies' need and convince them that approve our product and it will be a success in market. The moment the product hits the market, people are going to ask the payers, all those commercial bodies, what is the real world evidence? This will be successful. And that's where the big opportunity. So in US, the pharma biotech industry, they cover only 14% of healthcare expenditure. Remaining 33% comes from the evidences that the product is going to be successful. So the combining this gives you about 50%. So just not limiting ourselves to 14%, which is just the biotech pharma product, but increasing the pie to the size of 50%, and then having your strategies and then policies to support it, and then implementation plans. And that's why I request Bridge to have more think tank of this sort to cover the bigger picture and take it to the strategy level and implementation level. Over to you, Tarun.
Interesting points. Listening to you, I remembered a conversation I had over 2 years ago with a union minister who's currently serving. After after saying some unparliamentary words, he said Indian entrepreneurs would like to talk big things, but they don't put down to writing checks on R&D. And India continues to have the lowest R&D spending in the world. And the minister went on to say to me, and he laughed, that Indian industries spend more on their sons' marriages than R&D expenditure in their companies. So I think I'll move on. Achha, now since we are almost out of time, but the discussion has got really interesting. If I have the consent of my panelists, may I extend this webinar by 20 minutes? Do I have the consent of all my panelists?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll go across to Ma'am Kritika Krishnamurthy. Kritika, the recent Asian Development Bank working paper series titled The Startup Environment and Funding Activity 2020 said India has made a lot of progress in the startup culture, but there are huge challenges like the unorganized and the fragmented nature of the market, a lack of clear and transparent policy across sectors, and abrupt changes to policy at the drop of a hat. Many times secretaries change and the whole policy changes. That's not unknown in India, which is why India is more or less called a very personalized policy market where individuals change and the whole, in fact, governments change and policies change. So there is no continuity. There is also infrastructure issues. So as far as bridges is concerned, what do you think India needs to do to have world-class incubation centers? And as far as policy is concerned, do you think that is still causing India problems?
So Tarun, the problem with the startup industry and with the policies of startups is that, look, policy space works in a very similar way as compared to managing a company. Management, big companies, they generally put processes in place. And if the process works, they tend not to touch it for years and years, sometimes hundreds of years to come, unless someone goes and does a litigation and then they have to change their structure. Now, the problem with the startup space has been that the policy, startup policies in India, although India has been trying really hard and we have some really innovative brains in the country. On a lighter note, Tarun, I just realized that you and me are the only two people who don't have a doctorate on this entire panel. Okay, so that is the kind of talent pool that India has. But the problem is that startups in India and incubators, let me begin with startups and then I'll go to incubators. The problem with startups and in spaces like biotechnology is that they are started by people who had the original idea. The entrepreneurs are really scientists and researchers, and that is always their core area. And so they have this idea that, okay, if I work with this bacteria or this virus like this, so this things will happen and this will help it. The problem that happens is that they need help. And the biotech startups, unfortunately for them, there are only three words that can help them: money, money, money. It's a very capital intensive industry. I have had the privilege of incubation centers run by Dr. Jitendra or by Dr. Manisha Acharya, and you have these really costly equipments which help these innovators achieve their pilot level studies and prove their proof of concept. But that is the problem. Startups are not just about ideas. They are about making ideas marketable and taking them to the market successfully, being able to approach the supply chain, and finally reaching out to the end consumer. And that requires not just scientific knowledge. It requires assistance in sales, marketing. It requires funding for the pilot study, for doing so far as I understand, then you also have to do a study where you try and manufacture a batch of your product at a manufacturing level and get the same kind of results. So there is a lot of work involved in these kind of things. And so one thing that startups need is getting matching partners who can give them this kind of a worldly wise support, if I may say so, which can help them market their products and take them and really make them marketable, or what the industry wants. And at the same time, I feel that we are not making the most of the incubators in India. The startup policy in India has always been that, oh, this amount of funds have been allocated for startups and the startups in India are going to be funded. Those funds, are handed over to a very big government fund of funds that I don't want to name. And then finally, nothing trickles down to the real startups in the country. Why does that happen? That happens because you did not chart the stakeholders through which you wanted to trickle down. You wanted the policy trickle down effect. And you don't need to look elsewhere. You have very good government incubators. You have a thriving co-working space environment in India. Why don't you start giving out licenses to these co-working spaces to act as mini incubators or startups for those kind of startups that they do not require help with the equipment and those kind of things. And then through this incubator ecosystem, especially we have some excellent government incubators which have a lot of enabling capability. You need to allow the incubators to become enablers in the sense of assistance in funding. If you want to give better regulatory environment for startups, not just in the sense of getting patents or getting drug approvals, but labor law compliances, or something so minuscule and something so boring, if they are able to do it in an easier way, and the incubator is able to enable and certify that, look, I know the startup, I know that it is legitimate, it has this number of people working for it or whatever, and they can file all their compliances through the incubators. The incubators can become your enablers. You don't need to, so long as you don't create multiple stakeholders who are working with you in the startup regulatory or the policy space, you're not going to get the kind of impact that you want to see. There's a lot of talent in India, but they need the kind of policy ease and the policy push to make this happen. And that, I think, the incubators in India can play a big role in that sense. and they have the bandwidth to do it. You just give them the job, they'll do it, I'm sure.
Interesting points by Ma'am Kritika Krishnamurthy. And I would like to point out, I myself interacted with a few startups who relocated their registrations from India to Singapore because it was very tough for them to comply with the demands of the local authorities. I don't want to name the demands made, but I would like to stop here for this. I'll go across to Dr. Jitendra Kumar. You recently penned an article on the golden window for India to unleash the potential of the biotech sector. You drew a case for the biotech sector to be a leader, much in tune with the Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar ambitions, that we can make biotech and R&D for the world. We can be the biotech engine for the world. And you pointed out how to unleash it. Could you just elaborate on the idea that you have on this issue?
Definitely. I would like to, reiterate the things which I think Dr. Murali and Dr. G.S. Krishnan and Rudra has already spoken about, and others also. Where does it start? The innovation starts at universities and public research labs. First, they have to be strengthened. How they have to be strengthened? The universities have to be rehauled totally. So we have this some education policy. UGC is coming up with some independent body and all that. So I'm not aware of the specifics of those laws. Maybe Kritika will know what this new regulation for UGC has set up, where there's a more autonomy for universities to. So rather than becoming a political battlegrounds or something, political breeding grounds for, they should be breeding grounds for the innovation. Unless we fix up our university system, it is very difficult to progress. Why? Because I'll tell you, we say a lot of things about Indian biotech making good headways and all, but there's no integrated effort. It is very, very fragmented and islands of excellence, as we say. But if you compare US, there is a university is a universe in itself. They have different departments which are excellent. They collaborate with each other. Department. There's a MBA school there within the university. There's an incubator within the university. They all are cross-talking. There is an institutional mechanism to create ventures from universities. We do not have a single university in India where all these factors all these aspects are put together to create an institutional mechanism of venture creation. You name one university. The best one is JNU. Do they have the bio-incubator? No. Do they have an MBA program? No. So the technologies that are generated in the so-called research institutions, like say universities, how they are going to be commercialized? There is no technology transfer offices there also. Now, whatever research is happening, the good quality research is happening at DBT institutions, CSI, some CSI, not all, some CSI labs. And then, of course, they lack the other aspects, engineering aspects. So if there is a DBT funded institution, DBT research institution, there is no aspect for engineering aspects are missing there. So design aspects are missing, management aspects are missing, business aspects. So how do we actually, push the, first of all, do the good innovation, research, and then translate is a different question now. Incubation centers. Now, Kritika had a very good optimism about incubation, which is good. I also support her, but there are huge amount of limitations in the whole concept of incubation itself in India. It is run on the project mode, 5-year projects. It is given to universities for, as a funded project for 5 years. There is no continuity. If they suppose if it's not funded, they'll stop because the host institution is not going to put money to run the center. Huge centers like say Bangalore Bioinnovation Center. I'm fortunate that Karnataka is fortunate that the state government is supporting this incubator, but universities cannot support the institutions, incubators. If the funding is not there from external source, say for example, central government or some scheme, it's all scheme based. It's not a long-term institutional mechanism. It is just a short-term mechanism, which is okay, but slowly it has to crystallize into a more robust mechanism. That's what I am trying to say.
Okay.
Now move on to the startup ecosystem there. Then again, I told about there's no pilot scale manufacturing available. There's no clean rooms available for making pilot scale products for ICMR approval, for example, if COVID-19 situation. Although Murali said that it is now very good optimistic situation, which I also feel it has changed a lot. But still, there are mechanisms missing in place where people are running from pillar to post to even produce some grams of clinical validation. Then there is a hospital. The integration with the hospital is not there in properly. For clinical trials, there are companies who are coming to me saying that, see, I have gone to Ayush, but it's not. I'm not getting any reply. They say that since you have changed this little formulation method, that's why it will not fit under Ayush, so you cannot do clinical trial and all. So there are a lot of confusion in the startups as to how to proceed with the regulatory pathway, how to proceed with there is a delays, so there are various challenges, funding mechanism. So if that can be fixed, the access to capital, infrastructure, so all these are missing gaps. Why? Because the universities have not done their job properly since from the time of India. If universities were robust, all these aspects which I'm talking about, different aspects, they would be there integrated in the universities, and they can do up to scale up and pilot scale at least, and then some industry will take it up or they will move out for a scale up and access the venture capital. One thing which I would like to emphasize, just give me 1 minute more. And there was a question from one of the participants here, audience, Sri Lakshmi. She is also a biotech entrepreneur and manufacturer. So see, what her question was that, can we create some common facilities for manufacturing rather than industry creating it? Because for small entrepreneurs who are raising up to the technology readiness level, it's very difficult to put so much capital cost in creating such infrastructure. So maybe incubators or so biopharma mission has been started, which I think would cater to that need. But I think it has to be hastened. So suppose, for example, BBC is now creating a 100-liter fermenter facility, which many entrepreneurs have said that they want it to make a pilot, say Tojo Vikas, IoSynth and all. They're very, very promising entrepreneurs, and they are stuck up at that level. The time loss is huge. So I think if these factors are taken care of, we will be the leader in biotech, I can say that.
Interesting and very forcefully made points, and Dr. Jitendra Kumar reiterating the importance of universities. Again, and I think he very strongly also feels about it that India loses a lot on not having the kind of universities that we should have to be a 10 trillion or a $20 trillion economy. I think even you would concur it's not possible to be a $20 trillion economy without having the kind of universities. In fact, we lose a lot of money in foreign exchange to education because of that. That's quite a huge number. I'll go across to Manisha Acharya, Dr. Manisha Acharya. I would want to know from you that you were recently nominated to the Expert Advisory Committee on Innovation of the Science, Technology and Entrepreneurship Development Program at the Ministry of Science and Technology. There are also multiple studies internationally which point out gender parity in the issue of biotech. Do you think that India can achieve gender parity in biotechnology, and what are the hindrances? Do you see a lot of women coming forward to opt for this field?
See, what is the condition before 4 or 5 years? Definitely the percentage of women innovators, women entrepreneurs participation definitely increased due to different programs, different efforts of Government of India, different ministries. But still, if you say there's a significant disparities between the women and men. If you see the only the 14% entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in India presently out of 100%, and even the percentage of women entrepreneurs in STEM area in innovation and entrepreneurship it's still further low. So we need to think about why the percentage is so low. If you see the number of patents filed by the women entrepreneurs, it is very low in India. So what are the first we should know what are the factors it includes. So definitely it is the insufficient access to the capital, including the lack of knowledge about the potential sources, issues related to the gender-based and cultural constraint. This is very much into in India. This cultural constraint is very much. That is the major disadvantage for the women entrepreneurs and innovators. I'm not talking about the metro cities and all this, but if you will go to the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, that definitely this problem is it is huge. And it is also the knowledge of the limited access to the new market, lack of market knowledge to women entrepreneurs is very low. Bookkeeping knowledge also very low for the women innovators and entrepreneurs. And also the lack of business knowledge, lack of access support to the networks, mentors, investors. How many investors are investing in women entrepreneurs? It is very, very low. Why it is happening? We need to know about it. We as incubators also need to know about it. Where is the lag? Where is the lag behind it? So there is the lack of access of information and communication technology also. So as per I think, and as we are doing several programs for the women entrepreneurs, and basically I am also I have a whole forum for all type of women entrepreneurs, not only in, of course in biotech, but into several sectors. So I know what are the problems, barriers of the women entrepreneurs, why they are facing. They are very much frank and they can discuss freely with the women. So, but we have a very few role model in women. So we need to create more role model mentors in women. That is very much required. So, and we need a very strong forum, strong network where exclusively for the women entrepreneurs and innovators. And also we need, of course, there are many acceleration programs now. It is happening in India only for women innovators and entrepreneurs. But we need more and more dedicatedly acceleration program for the women innovators. And here I'd like to mention that although there are several efforts of DST and DBT of Government of India to support women innovators and scientists, entrepreneurs like women scientists of DST scheme, BioCare of Department of Biotechnology, and there are few, of course, few incubators which are exclusively focused on women entrepreneurs, innovators. But still, there are many things, lots of things we need to do. Exclusively, we need to do several more women-centric startup incubation centers, and we need to create some grants specifically for the innovators and entrepreneurs in women, for the women. So, if you see the number of women entrepreneurs or number of women biotechnologists, still their number is good. But they don't know how to, after that innovation and all these things, they are facing lots of problems. And even our investors, even the incubators, we have also not that clarity how to help the women startups. So because they have to give some different type of help, they need more handhold support, and that things is there is a lack. So we need to take care on that. Definitely more and more things are happening in Department of Science and Technology. They are also focusing how to fill up that gap, and how to focus more incubators will come up to support the women entrepreneurs only, and more programs will come up, more acceleration program will come up. So that is the thing that I would like to mention.
Okay, thank you for making these points. I'll go across to Dr. PM Murali and want to know from him that do you see India attracting a lot of investment from biotech manufacturers, and what is the kind of wish list that they had that India should at least do these 4 or 5 things for us not to go to other countries but consider India as the destination to invest?
Thank you, Tarun. So I'll make this very brief because I think we are running out of time here. So see, manufacturing decisions by multinationals are generally taken with a lot of thought process in it, because by the time they have that center profitable, it will be almost 10 years or even 15 years before the center becomes very profitable. So one of the classic example is my own colleague Krishnan, who is there, who has put up a plant on behalf of Novozymes. So that if you predate that decision, he would have done that decision several years ago before he could actually put it up there. Now the reason is very simple. They need to be sure that they will do the global arithmetic on how things are, which is the best place, and then come to that. Now, one of the mixed signals that India has been giving many times is that we've been very jerky about our policies, Tarun. So what is happening is that people are worried about how consistent our policies are going to be when it comes to putting up a a big investment in India, which is manufacturing. So it's not a small thing. So you can't like offshore it suddenly, take it away from somewhere. For example, if you see Foxconn, they've invested huge money in China, and they are now moving to Chennai, which is a big leap of faith into coming into Chennai. So we have to remember this is a model where you need all the political alignments in place, so that if whichever government comes in, whichever minister comes in, whichever state government kicks in, we have to be sure that the manufacturing industries are left untouched, so that they are not subjected to daily laws and daily changes, which will create a huge problem for them. Now, there was a participant here who did mention about labor laws, which is of course now suffering or changing a bit. But then there are several other challenges that we need to address, Tarun. I'll just take 3 of them and I'll tell you just a bullet point. So we need to significantly upgrade some of the infrastructure that goes in with what the manufacturing needs. Because most of these manufacturing units, as you know, will be placed several kilometers away from the main cities. So you need to have infrastructure. You need to have these guys return home at good time, you know, to still be with the family and so on and so forth. And wherever they are going to put up the manufacturing, they need lots of other support systems on that place there. The 2 main issues that I'm really worried, and I'm always worried, and I keep saying this in all forums, is one is this license Raj, and the other one is the tax terrorism. Now, these 2 will have to definitely be taken into consideration by the highest person in the country. It should be the Prime Minister or anybody else, to reassure that the country will not subject any of these big manufacturing industries that are coming into India to either a license Raj or a tax terrorism, because these are the 2 things that we don't want people to be subjected to. The last point I wanted to mention here, in terms of how manufacturing industries will come in here, is they will have to be extremely novel. They have to serve local, because India is also a very big market. So it's those type of manufacturing that will come in, because it will save a lot of the logistic cost and things like that. And they will ensure that due to the IP laws and regulations, they make the next generation, before the next generation type of products into India, because they would like to be very sure that our IP regime covers some of their most novel ones. So they may put out things that are 1 generation earlier there. And then they will have to be very clear that the obsolescence of their manufacturing doesn't happen very quickly, because in India, it takes time to set up things. So which means that you will have to budget another year or 2 for putting all the various approvals and starting up a plant, compared to any other place like, you know, Singapore or Malaysia or wherever that is. So to answer your question, Tarun, the easiest thing is we need to have a very consistent policy with no knee jerk. So that's the key to attracting manufacturing into India. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Famous last words, as one may say, important points, and very frankly made so. I know we overshot time, but the discussion was so interesting but I couldn't help but extend the webinar, very well organized by Bridge Policy Think Tank. I would like to thank Dr. Krishnan Srinivasan, Dr. PM Murali, Kritika Krishnamurthy from Bridge, Dr. Manisha Acharya, Dr. Rudra Dubey, and Dr. Jitendra Kumar, who have helped organize all of this. And I would like to thank each one of you for sparing your time. I know it's not easy to attend webinars. Personal meetings are much easier. It takes a lot out of you, but you've given me your 1.5 hours. I would like to personally thank each one of you. And I would like to end this webinar here, and looking forward to more such interesting topics and webinars on different topics, which I think will be very useful for the industry. And I hope some interesting ideas and suggestions come out of such an exercise. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bridge.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, everyone.